The last stand, Protocol Captain, Alina Rodriguez pressed, her face against the cold observation deck window of Orbital Defense Station Prometheus, watching humanity's last hope burn in the vacuum of space. The Zephyrian invasion fleet stretched across the darkness like a plague of metal locusts, their crimson energy beams cutting through Earth's defensive line with terrifying efficiency. What had started as humanity's greatest naval battle was quickly becoming its final funeral. "Captain, we've lost the carrier Valiant," reported Lieutenant Marcus Webb, his voice barely steady as he read from his tactical display. "The destroyer. Formations are breaking apart. We're down to 37 combat vessels from our original fleet of 200. Elena's knuckles whitened as she gripped the railing. 200 ships, 200 crews, over 50,000 souls who had answered Earth's call when the Zephyrian Empire declared humanity a threat to galactic stability. The aliens claimed. Humans expanded too quickly, colonized too aggressively, and posed a danger to established civilizations. Their solution was simple and brutal: complete extermination. The battle had raged for 18 hours, and the outcome was becoming horrifically clear. The Zephyrians possessed technology that made human weapons look like stone clubs. Their ships moved like liquid shadow, bending space around them to avoid incoming fire. Their energy weapons punched through human shields as if they were made of paper. Most terrifying of all, they showed no mercy. Every human escape pod was hunted down and destroyed. Every damaged ship was finished off with methodical precision. "Admiral Sterling on Priority Channel," Webb announced, his young face pale with exhaustion and grief. Alina straightened her uniform and activated the communication link. Admiral Victoria Sterling's weathered face appeared on the main screen, her usually immaculate appearance now showing the strain of humanity's darkest hour. Behind her, the bridge of the command ship Endeavour buzzed with desperate activity. "Alina," the Admiral said, her voice carrying the weight of impending defeat, "I'm implementing last stand protocol. All remaining ships are to fall back to Earth's atmospheric defense grid. We'll make our final stand there." Alina felt her heart sink. Last stand protocol meant exactly what it sounded like. When conventional, military resistance became impossible, Earth's remaining forces would position themselves between the enemy and the planet's surface. They would fight until every ship was destroyed, buying precious time for evacuation efforts that everyone knew were inadequate. 3 billion people lived on Earth. The evacuation ships could carry maybe 50,000. "Understood, Admiral," Alina replied, though the words tasted like ash in her mouth. "All surviving vessels will rendezvous at Defense Grid Alpha." But before Sterling could respond, her communication officer's voice cut through the channel. "Admiral, we're receiving an emergency transmission from Antarctica. Ultra-classified frequency. They say it's about Project Void." Alina saw the Admiral's eyes widen with something that looked almost like hope. Project Void was whispered about in the highest levels of Earth's military command, but Alina had always assumed it was just another theoretical weapons program that would never see practical application. "Patch it through to Captain Rodriguez as well," Sterling ordered. "She needs to hear this." The screen split, showing a new face alongside the Admiral. Dr. Alexander Chen appeared to be calling from deep underground, his Asian features gaunt from what looked like years of sleepless nights. His laboratory coat was stained, and his normally neat black hair hung in disheveled strands. Behind him, Alina could see banks of equipment that hummed with ominous energy. "Admiral Sterling, Captain Rodriguez," Dr. Chen said, his voice carrying an odd mixture of excitement and terror. I've been monitoring the battle from our facility. The situation is worse than even our worst projections. Doctor, please tell me you have something, Sterling said. Anything at all. Dr. Chen ran a trembling hand through his hair. I have something, Admiral. But I pray to God we never have to use it. For 15 years, I've been working on Project Void under the Antarctica ice sheets. We've developed something that goes beyond conventional weapons, beyond conventional physics. Alina leaned forward. What kind of weapon are we talking about, Doctor? We call it the Galaxycleaver, Chen said, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. It doesn't destroy matter in the traditional sense. It tears holes in the fundamental structure of reality itself. Anything caught in its field of effect simply ceases to exist. Not destroyed, not disintegrated. It never existed at all. The bridge fell silent except for the distant rumble of alien weapons striking the station's shields. Alina felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Doctor, that sounds like something that could destroy more than just the enemy fleet. You're absolutely right to be concerned, Chen replied. In our small-scale tests, we've successfully eliminated everything from asteroids to derelict spacecraft, but we've never tested it on this scale. The quantum equations suggest it will work, but there could be unforeseen consequences. Reality doesn't like being torn apart, Captain. It tends to fight back in unpredictable ways. Admiral Sterling's voice cut through Elena's growing dread. Doctor, how quickly can this weapon be deployed? It's ready now, Chen said. I've spent the last 2 years preparing for exactly this scenario, but I need someone to pilot it. The Galaxycleaver isn't a ship-mounted weapon or a missile. It requires a skilled pilot to fly directly into the enemy formation and activate it. At the optimal coordinates, Alina understood immediately. It's a suicide mission. Not necessarily, Chen said, though his expression suggested otherwise. The pilot ship is equipped with experimental shielding designed to protect against the weapons' effects. In theory, the pilot should survive the activation. In theory, Alina repeated. The alternative is watching 3 billion people die, Sterling said grimly. Captain Rodriguez, I'm ordering you to take your fastest ship to Antarctica immediately. If Dr. Chen's weapon can save Earth, we have to try it. Alina nodded, though her mind reeled with the implications. A weapon that tore holes in reality itself. Technology that could literally edit existence. The Galaxycleaver sounded less like a tool of war and more like something that belonged in the realm of gods. I'll take the Lightning, Alina said, referring to her personal reconnaissance craft. It's fast enough to reach Antarctica in 40 minutes. Negative, Captain, Sterling said. I need you to survive this mission. Take Lieutenant Webb with you as backup pilot. If something happens to you, he needs to be able to complete the mission. Alina looked at Webb, seeing her own mixture of fear and determination reflected in his young face. He had volunteered for the most dangerous assignments throughout the war, never backing down from impossible odds. If anyone deserved to survive humanity's final gambit, it was Marcus Webb. Lieutenant prepared the Lightning for immediate departure. Alina ordered emergency supplies and maximum fuel load. Aye, Captain, Webb replied, already moving toward the hangar bay, as Alina prepared to leave the bridge that had been her home for 3 years of warfare. She paused to look out at the battle one more time. The Zephyrian fleet had formed into what looked like a perfect sphere around Earth, their ships glowing with malevolent energy. They weren't just here to conquer. They were here to erase humanity from existence. Dr. Chen, Alina said, still watching. The alien formations. When we activate this Galaxycleaver, what exactly will happen to the enemy fleet? Chen's voice carried the weight of a man who had stared into the abyss of his own creation. Captain, if everything works as designed, the Zephyrian fleet won't be destroyed. From the perspective of universal history, they will never have been there at all. The quantum field will retroactively edit their existence from this region of space-time. And if something goes wrong, Chen said quietly, we might accidentally erase our entire solar system, or create a cascade effect that unravels reality across several light years. The mathematics are ... uncertain. Alina closed her eyes and thought of her younger sister, Maria, who taught elementary school in Mexico City. She thought of her parents, who ran a small restaurant in Barcelona. She thought of every human being on Earth who was depending on soldiers and scientists to save them from extinction. I understand the risks, Dr. Alina said. Begin final preparations. We'll be there in 40 minutes. As the communication ended, Alina took one last look at the Earth's defense station, Prometheus. Half the lights were out, and she could see teams of engineers working frantically to repair shield generators. These people would probably die when the Zephyrians finally broke through the station's defenses, but they kept working anyway. That was humanity in a nutshell, too stubborn to quit even when facing impossible odds. Alina made her way to the hangar bay, where Webb was already conducting pre-flight checks on the Lightning. The sleek reconnaissance craft was built for speed and stealth, not comfort. Its cramped cockpit barely had room for 2 people, and the passenger seat had been modified to accommodate emergency life support equipment. All systems green, Captain, Webb reported. We can launch as soon as you give the word. Alina strapped herself into the pilot's seat and began the launch sequence. Through the hangar bay's force field, she could see the battle raging in space. A human cruiser exploded in a brilliant flash, its wreckage scattering across the void. The crew of that ship had families waiting for them at home, children who would never see their parents again. Lightning to control, Alina said into her radio. Requesting immediate launch clearance for Priority Alpha mission. Clearance granted, Lightning, came the reply. Godspeed, Captain. The launch catapult hurled their ship into space with crushing acceleration. Alina angled their trajectory toward Earth's south pole, pushing the Lightning's engines to maximum output. Behind them, the space battle continued its deadly dance. But Alina forced herself to focus on the mission ahead. The fate of humanity now rested on a weapon that might save them all or destroy everything they had ever known. As they plunged through Earth's atmosphere toward the frozen continent of Antarctica, Alina wondered if they were about to become humanity's saviors or the architects of its final mistake. Reality's edge to the Lightning touched down on the Antarctic ice with a crystalline crunch that seemed impossibly loud in the polar silence. Alina and Webb emerged from their craft into air so cold it felt like breathing liquid nitrogen. The landscape stretched endlessly in all directions, a white desert, broken only by the occasional ridge of wind-carved ice. According to their coordinates, they were standing directly above one of humanity's most classified research facilities. There, Webb pointed to what looked like a natural ice formation about 50 meters away. As they approached, Alina could see that the ice had been carefully sculpted to conceal a metal door marked with biometric scanners and warning symbols in 12 languages. The door recognized Alina's military credentials and slid open with a pneumatic hiss, revealing an elevator shaft that plunged deep into the earth. They descended for what felt like an eternity, passing through layers of rock and permafrost until finally emerging into a vast underground complex that buzzed with activity. Dr. Alexander Chen met them at the elevator, flanked by a team of scientists who looked like they hadn't slept in weeks. The underground facility was a marvel of engineering, with corridors that stretched beyond sight and laboratories filled with equipment Alina couldn't begin to understand. The air hummed with energy, and she could feel a strange vibration in her bones, as if reality itself was being stressed by whatever they were doing down here. "Captain Rodriguez, Lieutenant Webb," Chen said, his voice echoing in the metallic corridors. "Thank you for coming. I wish we were meeting under better circumstances." Alina wasted no time on pleasantries. "Doctor, show me this weapon. We don't have much time." Chen led them deeper into the facility, past laboratories where scientists worked frantically at computers displaying equations that hurt Elena's eyes to look at. The mathematics seemed to twist and writhe on the screens, as if the numbers themselves were alive and trying to escape. "The Galaxycleaver project began 15 years ago," Chen explained as they walked. "We were initially trying to develop faster than communication by manipulating quantum entanglement on a macro scale. But we discovered something far more disturbing: by creating sufficient quantum coherence in a localized field, we could actually edit the fundamental properties of space-time itself." They reached a massive chamber that took Elena's breath away. In the center of the room sat a spacecraft unlike anything she had ever seen. It was roughly triangular, about the size of a fighter jet, but its surface seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange geometric patterns covered its hull, patterns that seemed to shift and change when Alina wasn't looking directly at them. "This is the Voidwalker," Chen said, his voice filled with a mixture of pride and terror. "It's built specifically to survive the activation of the Galaxycleaver device. The hull is constructed from metamaterials that exist in a state of quantum superposition. Theoretically, it should remain stable even when local reality becomes ... flexible." Webb circled the craft, his pilot's eye examining its unusual design. "Doctor, I don't see any visible weapons systems. Where exactly is this Galaxycleaver device?" Chen approached a panel on the craft's side and placed his palm against it. The panel glowed briefly, then opened to reveal a chamber containing what looked like a crystal sphere about the size of a basketball. The sphere pulsed with inner light, and Alina could swear she heard it singing a note just below the range of human hearing. "This is it," Chen said softly. "The Galaxycleaver core. It contains quantum-locked antimatter suspended in a field of manipulated vacuum energy. When activated, it creates what we call a reality cascade, a field effect that essentially tells the universe that everything within its range never existed." Alina stared at the device, feeling a primitive fear that went deeper than rational thought. Every instinct she possessed screamed that this thing was wrong, that it violated natural laws that should never be broken. "How do we know it will only affect the Zephyrian fleet?" she asked. "We don't," Chen admitted. "The field effect should propagate outward from the activation point until it encounters sufficient quantum resistance to stop it. Our calculations suggest it will encompass roughly 50,000 cubic kilometers of space around Earth's orbital region. That should be enough to eliminate the enemy fleet while leaving Earth itself untouched." "Should be," Alina repeated. "Doctor, what happens if your calculations are wrong?" Chun's face went pale. "If the cascade effect doesn't stop when it's supposed to, it could theoretically continue propagating until it reaches something with enough quantum mass to absorb it. The nearest object with that kind of mass would be our sun. The implications hit Alina like a physical blow. You're saying this weapon could destroy our entire solar system? It's possible, Chen said. But Captain, look at your tactical display. Check the current battle status. Alina activated her wrist computer and connected to the defense network. The data that came through made her stomach clench. Earth's remaining fleet was down to 11 ships. The Zephyrian formation was tightening around the planet, preparing for what looked like a final bombardment of the surface. The enemy will begin planetary bombardment in approximately 2 hours, Chen said, reading the same data. Based on their weapons' demonstrated effectiveness, they can sterilize Earth's surface in less than 6 hours. Captain, we're not choosing between safety and danger. We're choosing between certain death and uncertain survival. Alina closed her eyes and tried to center herself. As a military officer, she had been trained to make difficult decisions under pressure, but nothing in her training had prepared her for choosing between the complete annihilation of humanity and the possible destruction of their entire solar system. How do we deploy the weapon? She asked. Chen activated a holographic display that showed Earth's orbital region. The Zephyrian fleet formed a perfect sphere around the planet, their ships maintaining precise formations that spoke of military discipline and overwhelming confidence. The Voidwalker needs to reach the exact center of their formation, Chen explained. The Galaxycleaver works by creating a quantum resonance cascade that propagates outward in all directions. To eliminate the entire fleet, you need to activate it from the optimal geometric center of their deployment. Webb studied the tactical display with a pilot's eye for navigation. That's going to be like flying into the heart of a star, Captain. They'll have every weapon in their fleet focused on that central point. The Voidwalker has advanced stealth capabilities, Chen said. Its quantum-shifted hull should make it effectively invisible to most sensor systems. But once you begin the activation sequence, you'll have about 30 seconds before the device reaches critical resonance. After that, either we save humanity or we accidentally erase our solar system, Alina finished. Doctor, I need to know, in your professional opinion, what are the odds that this weapon will work as intended? Chen was quiet for a long moment, his scientific mind clearly wrestling with the question. 70% chance it eliminates the Zephyrian fleet as planned. 20% chance it fails to activate properly and we die conventionally. 10% chance it creates a cascade effect that destroys everything within several light years. Asterisk. Alina looked at Webb, seeing her own determination reflected in his face. They had both sworn an oath to defend Earth against all enemies, even if it meant sacrificing their own lives. But this went beyond personal sacrifice. This was gambling with the existence of every living thing in their solar system. I'll take those odds, Alina said. Lieutenant Webb, you'll remain here and monitor the activation from the command center. If something goes wrong, you'll need to report our results to any surviving Earth forces. With respect, Captain, that's not happening, Webb replied firmly. This is a two-person mission, and you're going to need a co-pilot to manage the Galaxycleaver's activation sequence while you handle evasive maneuvers. Alina wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. The Voidwalker's controls were designed for 2 operators, and the activation sequence was too complex for one person to manage while flying through enemy fire. Very well, Lieutenant, but I wanted on record that I ordered you to stay behind. Noted and disregarded, Captain. They spent the next hour learning the Voidwalker's unusual control systems. The craft flew more like a thought than a machine, responding to neural interfaces that translated pilot intentions directly into flight commands. The sensation was disorienting at first, like trying to fly while dreaming. But Alina gradually adapted to the strange symbiosis between human consciousness and quantum-shifted technology. Chen and his team ran final diagnostics on the Galaxycleaver device while Alina and Webb familiarized themselves with their potentially final mission. The weapon's activation sequence was elegantly simple. Approach the target coordinates, initiate quantum field harmonics, then trigger the cascade effect. 30 seconds later, either the Zephyrian fleet would cease to exist, or everything within light years would join them in non-existence. Captain Chen said as they prepared for launch, "There's one more thing you should know. If the weapon works as intended, you may experience some unusual sensations during the activation. The quantum field affects human consciousness in ways we don't fully understand. Some of our test pilots reported feeling like they could see through time itself." Alina strapped herself into the Voidwalker's pilot seat, her hands resting on controls that seemed to pulse with their own heartbeat. "Doctor, at this point, unusual sensations are the least of my concerns." The launch bay doors opened directly onto the polar sky, where Alina could see the distant flashes of the space battle raging in orbit. The Zephyrian fleet hung in the darkness like malevolent stars, their formation tightening around Earth with predatory patience. "Voidwalker 2. Antarctica Control," Alina said into her radio, requesting final clearance for Project Galaxycleaver activation. "Clearance granted," came Chen's voice. "Captain, Lieutenant, it's been an honor. Save our world." Alina engaged the Voidwalker's engines and felt the craft leap into the sky with impossible smoothness. The quantum-shifted propulsion system made no sound, produced no visible exhaust, and seemed to ignore several fundamental laws of physics. They climbed through Earth's atmosphere in complete silence, approaching the battle zone where humanity's fate would be decided as they entered orbital space. Alina could see the true scale of the Zephyrian deployment. Thousands of alien vessels formed perfect geometric patterns around Earth, their weapons charging with energy that painted space in shades of crimson death. The few remaining human ships fought desperately, but they were so outnumbered that their resistance seemed almost symbolic. "Stealth systems active," Webb reported, his hands dancing across the co-pilot's controls. "We're invisible to their sensors, but that won't last long once we start the activation sequence." Alina guided the Voidwalker toward the center of the enemy formation, threading between alien vessels that could have vaporized them with a single shot. The craft's neural interface translated her intentions into movements so fluid it felt like swimming through space itself. They reached the optimal coordinates just as the Zephyrian fleet began its final bombardment of Earth. Beams of energy lanced downward toward the planet's surface, striking the remaining orbital defense platforms with devastating precision. Alina could see the lights of cities on Earth's night side, billions of people looking up at the sky and waiting to die. "Initiating Galaxycleaver activation sequence," Webb announced, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were about to attempt. Alina felt the weapon powering up through the ship's neural interface. The sensation was indescribable, like holding a piece of the Big Bang in her mind. Reality itself seemed to bend around them as the device reached critical resonance. 30 seconds to cascade effect, Webb reported. The Zephyrian fleet suddenly responded to their presence, as if the quantum buildup had made them visible to every sensor in the alien formation. Thousands of weapons turned toward their position, painting the Voidwalker with targeting lasers that burned like red stars. "They see us," Alina said, throwing the craft into evasive maneuvers that would have been impossible in any conventional ship. 20 seconds, Webb called out, his hands flying over the activation controls. Energy beams filled the space around them, missing by meters as Alina pushed the Voidwalker beyond its design limits. The craft's quantum-shifted hull began to glow with stress patterns, geometric shapes that seemed to exist in more dimensions than human eyes could process. 10 seconds, Webb announced. Alina could feel something building in the fabric of space, itself a tension that made her teeth ache and her vision blur. Through the neural interface, she sensed the Galaxycleaver reaching the point of no return, quantum fields aligning in patterns that would reshape local reality. 5 seconds, Webb said. 4, 3, 2, 1. Activation. Alina felt the universe tear apart around them. For an instant that lasted eternity, she could see through the walls of space and time itself. She saw the birth of stars and the death of galaxies, the quantum foam that underlay all existence, the delicate threads that held reality together. And then she saw those threads being cut, severed by a weapon too powerful for any species to safely wield. The cascade effect erupted outward from their position like a sphere of absolute nothingness. Wherever it touched, Zephyrian ships simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not vaporized, but edited out of existence as if they had never been there at all. Alina watched thousands of alien vessels vanish without even the courtesy of an explosion, erased from the universe by mathematics too terrible to contemplate. The effect continued to propagate, racing outward at the speed of thought, consuming empty space and alien technology with equal indifference. Alina held her breath, waiting to see if Chun's calculations were correct, if the cascade would stop before reaching Earth itself. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the effect stabilized. The quantum field found its natural equilibrium and collapsed back into ordinary space-time, leaving behind a sphere of perfect vacuum where the Zephyrian fleet had been. Alina and Webb found themselves alone in orbit around Earth, the only witnesses to humanity's most desperate gambit. The planet hung below them, beautiful and blue and alive, saved by a weapon that had rewritten the rules of existence itself. "Voidwalker to Earth control," Alina said into her radio, her voice barely steady. "The Galaxycleaver has been successfully deployed. The Zephyrian fleet has been eliminated." But even as she spoke the words of victory, Alina couldn't shake the feeling that they had crossed a line that should never have been crossed. They had saved humanity by wielding a power that gods themselves might fear to use. And somewhere in the back of her mind, she wondered what other species in the galaxy had taken notice of Earth's new capability. The Galaxycleaver had saved them, but Alina suspected that their real troubles were just beginning. Asterisk.